Welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. On this week's show, I get to interview Andrew Henderson, the author of Nomad Capitalist. I love on his website and his teachings, it says, "I've lived what you're going through now." And the premises of his book is talking and understanding about where you live, the taxes you pay, and ways that you can save money. And really living somewhere where you're welcome to live there. You feel comfortable in your environment and the cost of living and where you're at. And he, in particular, has lived out of the country for many, many years and has been fortunate enough to be very successful at the young age of 22. And I hope you enjoy the show because I really enjoyed talking to Andrew and how direct and pointed he is. And you can tell through the passion in his voice and his directness in the interview that he's got a lot to say and we've got a lot to learn from him. So I thank him so much for that. And if you've paid attention to my story, and maybe you don't know, I recently moved to Montana. And I'm absolutely loving the decision that I made. I've been here for a month now. And like what Andrew talks about, I did it for multiple reasons, but one of them was the economics of this state and my ability to move out of a very expensive state, which was California, and move to a state with no taxes and a lower cost of living. So for me, it gives me the ability to make the same money, but increase my own personal income through the savings. And I think the savings are so important to us as we look to plan out our future and put our money to good use. So please enjoy this interview with Andrew Henderson, the Nomad Capitalist. Hello and welcome to the Answer is Yes podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We've got another great show for you today. I've got Andrew on the line all the way from, you're in Mexico City. Is that where I understand you're at today?
I'm in Mexico City, making my way through 3 months here in Latin America, doing a lot of work.
Well, I got to say, admittedly, Mexico is one of my favorite countries to be in. I was in the tequila business for 10 years, and now I import beer and wine from the Valle de Guadalupe, and I just love the people down there. I don't know what your affinity is, but I know I appreciate the food and the culture.
Beautiful place, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, on our show, we like to dig into backgrounds and where things began for you. If you don't mind taking us back to I don't want to see your early childhood, but maybe when you started thinking about going to work or business or becoming an entrepreneur, and give us a little background on where it began for you.
Well, first of all, it's great to be with you, and I appreciate the invitation. I look back to about 11, 12 years old when two things happened that would later converge. When I was about 11 or 12 years old, I decided I wanted to be in business. It's interesting. I've been looking at one of my teenage idols recently, Bill Gates. I went back and I've been watching a bunch of his interviews. It's interesting to see him be in philanthropy now. But I've been going back and watching a lot of stuff that he was doing back when I was interested in. And people like him and got me interested in business at a very young age. I was reading business books. About the same time, my father, someone unintentionally said, "Listen, we were debating moving out of the country at the time. We eventually didn't. But he said, listen, even though we're not going to move out of the country, you should understand you're not forced to stay near where your parents are. You don't have an obligation to take care of us. We've made sure that we've financially set ourselves up for our old age, and no matter what happens, we'll be covered. You need to go where you're treated best. And if that's another city, another state, another country, it's all fair game." And what's been interesting for me and what I do now at Nomad Capitalist, my fifth or sixth business in life, and the one that I'm most passionate about and going to stick with, is I have a whole business around go where you're treated best. And that's really where it all started.
Yeah. Now, were your parents obviously were an influence on going where you're treated the best, and that philosophy works out for many. Because I think when we're passionate about what we're doing, we find success within that. And, I just find it interesting that how far you can reach outside of your comfort zone to find that success.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'll tell you one thing. One of the things that I'm known for is I gave up my U.S. citizenship several years ago, and I've been putting out some content recently, kind of diving into that because when you're an entrepreneur, and especially when you're an entrepreneur living the nomad capitalist lifestyle. I mean, entrepreneurs are a small portion, several percent of the population, and then you add several percent of that population. I mean, we're talking infinitesimal numbers, basically, of people who want to be entrepreneurs, live overseas, save tax, be dual citizens, that kind of thing. People think, oh, what a terrible guy, what a traitor. No, he doesn't want to pay us anymore. I don't agree with one of the things the United States has done, but I'll tell you in answer to your question, there's been a great sense of calm in my life, no longer having that identity of American. I'm not trying to say it's a bad identity or others shouldn't like it. I listen, go where you're treated best could mean you live in Montana or you live in California. Like if that's best for you, I'm not here to judge. What I'm saying is be intentional about it. And for me, that was an identity that for a number of reasons, including probably wanting to be an entrepreneur at 12 years old back when it wasn't popular and getting the snot beat out of me. I just never liked that identity. I was always kind of embarrassed by it. And so I have a great sense of peace and calm now that I've gone where I'm treated best and I've divested myself of things that just didn't feel right. And so absolutely, you should do that with your business. I think you should do it with your life. And I see a lot of people who watch my content who, they would like to, they have an excuse for not doing what I'm talking about. So if you're looking for a woman or a man who's a better fit, maybe it's not where you live. So I think there's so many ways to apply this is my point.
Yeah. You mentioned entrepreneur at a young age like that. What kind of thoughts were going through your mind at that age? Because we have a lot of parents that listen to this show and they're trying to encourage their kids to be entrepreneurs. And then we have a lot of younger audience that are also aspiring entrepreneurs. I'd just like to dig into what the thought process is or how at such a young age or feel like you could be an entrepreneur.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look back both at 12 and 122 when I was starting. I mean, and she said, wow, you must have exceeded your wild dreams. I said, nowhere close. Because when you're 15, you're like, I'm going to be a billionaire. Because you just figure it's all so easy, right? I mean, that's the thing about being in business. Everyone makes it look so easy. So, it's hard to say, hey, you're going to be in business and it's going to be guaranteed to work out. What I would say is, be comfortable failing. And if you have that attitude, that's what will drive you to succeed. And so if you think you want to be an entrepreneur, go ahead and do it. What I would caution in this day and age is, entrepreneurship is now cool. And I think that, I've talked about this, a lot of these entrepreneurs who aren't really that successful and who are putting out a lot of information about, how to live a life. I mean, I see people who are allegedly entrepreneurs who are saying revenue doesn't matter. Call me a dinosaur, but revenue does matter in business. You have to make a sale. I was selling things door to door at 8 years old. I created a magazine. I made websites for people selling their house. I did all kinds of things. I mean, I just was doing that. And people think, oh, that's cute. But when you turn 18 and you start a real business, your sales is not supposed to matter. So what I would say is, make sure it's something that you really want to do. I think, honestly, what I've learned, there has to be a certain ruthlessness about being an entrepreneur, and you have to accept that. And so, I would say try it, see how it goes. Be okay with failing. Be okay with, I might have to go and do something else, or I might have to pivot, or I might have to tweak. But do it because you really want to do it and follow your intuition is what I would say. I think if you're a good entrepreneur, you've got great intuition and you ignore it at your peril.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes if we have the ability to identify our own intuitions and what we are good at, we'll find that success. And oftentimes I think we get diverted by what society says we should be doing as opposed to what we're good at. And we go down the wrong roads way too often and wind up being unhappy and not satisfied in what we're doing day in, day out. What's your secret for being satisfied in what you're doing?
I'll tell you the secret. I was really thinking about this before coming on the show, and what have I said yes to? What is the secret? I think what I've really focused on in the last couple of years that's been very healing is saying yes to accepting yourself, saying yes to accepting your intuition, accepting your decisions. It's funny. I had a coach who knew of me before I hired him to be my coach. He followed my videos and my blogs at Nomad Capitalist. And when I hired him, he said, oh, I was really, really glad that it was you, Andrew Henderson, not some other Andrew Henderson, because I love your information, but I always thought you were a very nice person. I always thought, well, this is a guy who's really walking the walk, and he's a kind person. It was very refreshing because I think when you're in business, and again, I mean, when you add on the stuff that we talk about at Nomad Capitalist, it's like an extra layer. Most people don't understand, and what do most people do, especially in today's world where people are on edge, politically, economically, et cetera. You're going to get a lot of hate. You're going to get a lot of nastiness. People aren't going to understand you. I put out a video recently, why I don't hire freelancers. We now run a multi-million-dollar business, and I've decided I want people who are on the team. You're either in or you're out. I don't want to be chasing you down to fix my website. I'm slowly but surely, actually quickly but surely, getting rid of freelancers in any possible way possible. Not because I hate freelancers. I work with some of them, high-level freelancers. Not because I think that you shouldn't hire freelancers, but for me, that's what I found. I want buy-in. What did I get from the 20% of my audience that I guess are freelancers? Andrew sounds like a tyrant. He rules with an iron fist. He's an impossible. And what's been very cathartic for me in the last couple of years is surrounding myself finally people who are like, you know what? You want to see people succeed. People who buy into you, they leave much better than where they started. People come to work for me, they leave. 3 years later, they start their own business. That's something to be very proud of. But, no one talks about that. And so I think what's been very great is to see the benefit. Say, you know what? My intuition's good. I wanted to fire that guy 6 months ago, and I didn't because I wanted to be nice. And guess what happened? I got bit in the butt, right? I should have followed my intuition. Never should have hired that person. Never should have taken that client on. Just stuff like that. And so I think that just understanding that as an entrepreneur, and again, I'll add the nomad capitalist thing. If you do that, if you're a difference thinker in general, you've got to have a steely composition that you're okay. That's been something that I had a lot of trouble with because what pushed me for so long was all the girls in 7th grade laughing in my face. That's what drove me for so long. And, I had to twist and say, well, hold on, you're here now and and just accept you're okay.
Yeah. What's interesting, what you just said about kind of cutting the cord with those people that weren't necessarily a fit. And then you find yourself 9 months down the road going, man, that just bit me in the butt because I was trying to be a nice guy. As entrepreneurs, I think we find ourselves in that position way too often. And we don't realize that the longer we keep, whether it's dead weight or equipment we don't need, inventory we don't need, et cetera, that clock is still ticking on your financial capital and resources. The longer you hold off and be that nice guy, the deeper the hole you're going to get yourself into. And I love that you point that out. As harsh as of a reality that is, I think it's really important as an entrepreneur to understand how important it is.
It's also the appropriate thing to do, by the way. I mean, back a couple of years ago, we had some people on our team who probably weren't a great fit and probably too many interwoven relationships. But, I invested a small amount of money into some people's Amazon business and for selling stuff online because I wanted to learn more about that business. We've helped a lot of people, reduce their taxes who are in e-commerce businesses. And so we got into it. And very quickly, Amazon, banned their business because they were working for someone that had too many IPs. Long story short, I ended up with 10,000 balloons sitting in a warehouse in Los Angeles. And when the person, when we got rid of the person, I started getting all the emails. What do you want to do with your balloons? I finally said on Facebook, who wants these balloons? And some guy took them. I didn't charge them. I said, I just want them out. I want to stop getting the emails. This is not my core business. I don't need $8,000 for these balloons. Who wants them? You make the best use of them. And he did. And I think that when you look at employees, it's the same way. If someone's not a fit, and again, you've got to go with your intuition. This is what I've learned. I operate largely by feelings. And people would say, well, that's not fair. You could just operate by your feelings. No, I know who's excellent. I know who's weak. I know who needs just a little nudge. I think you have to go through your feelings, at least after you've done it a while. You know who's good. You know who's not good. And you know what? People who aren't good, there's probably somewhere where they're a better fit. Just like those balloons, there's probably somewhere where they can go and be a better contributor, be happier. They're never going to be happy in your organization if they're at odds with you. And if you think they're not doing a good job, they're not going to grow. They're going to be held back. It's not fair to them either. And I'm not, you remove people because you want to be fair to them. You remove them because you want, as you said, the dead weight to be brushed out of your company. But it is really a double-edged sword in that, people, everyone needs to go where they're treated best.